Okay, so we are looking at human resources today, and we have two types of resources. So we have natural resources as well as human resources. The natural resources we see here are soil, climate, rivers, fresh water, forest, wildlife, marine resources, mineral resources such as oil, natural gas, bauxite, diamond, and gold. Then we have our human resources, and our human resources deal with population size, population growth and change, health and education, and values and attitudes. All of these speak to the human resources in a country, and we need to know how to develop the human resource. All right. Now, aside from the fact that we have these two aspects or these two divisions of resources, we also need to recognize that resources can be renewable and non-renewable, right? So that's also another thing that we should be able to identify resources as being. So we have natural resources which are renewable, and we have those which
Add
are
posts or something or comment whatever, you go see one link
renewable.
and wherever you have your document, you go click on the link and wherever your document, you click on that.
All right. So we have natural resources that are renewable, and we have natural resources which are non-renewable. Based on the list that we have here, is anyone able to tell me the renewable, non-renewable? Just indicate by raise of hand. So we see who wants to share. So are you able to tell me the renewable versus the non-renewable? All right, Francis. So Francis, go ahead.
Sir, I think forest and wildlife would be renewable resources, while marine and like gold and diamonds would be non-renewable.
All right, all right, good. Let me hear from somebody else.
Sir, um, solar energy and soil will be a renewable resource, while for non-renewable resources you have oil and aluminum.
So solar energy, all right, and soil, all right. Well, good. All right, take us to the next slide, Brianna. So we're supposed to look, we're going to look at human resources first. And we know that human resources, we talk about the population, right? And we know that the population of a country, they're not in the same location, they're going to be in different locations, and they're going to be spread out um, in different, we call densities, and that's what we're going to look at now. Go to the next one. All right, so this is what the world population looks like as of the last 10 years. So the English speaking Caribbean had close to 7 million people in 2011, and we see the spread. The world had 7 billion people, 1,000 times as many. So we have 7 million and they have 1,000 times as much people that as we have. And we see the spread as it relates to what the world population looks like. You see how much the Asians have? So they have 60% of the world's population. That means that they are the majority. If we look at the Africans, we see them coming in second, and the European a third, um, coming in third, a very close third, with a 4%, and then Latin America weighing in with 8%. If you look at the Caribbean standing, 0.3, and yet still we have so many individuals living in the Caribbean region. Much more if we were supposed to look at those numbers for the Asian continent, with over roughly maybe half of the world's population, and even today, more than half of the world's population. Let's go to the next slide. So the population group, so we can look at groups within the population, and this is a way of um, calculating the number of individuals living in a particular um, area population. So we can look at the numbers by the age, so the different ages of individuals. So you may see when we are looking at maybe some questions, you will see age on the diagrams that we'll have. Maybe we'll see gender, less so occupations and others, but age is usually one of those big things where we'll see the population be measured, individuals between 0 to maybe 10, then from 11 to 20, then from 21 to 30, and then from 31 upward. And they do these because they want to find out. So let's say 50% of our population is between 0 to 20. Then the government will know that, hey, if most of the population is between 0 and 20 years, then we will have to put in place plans to cater for the needs of these individuals. However, if they realize that, let's say, 50% of the population is over 50, then they will have to put in the measures to take care of these individuals. So maybe they'll need more nursing home facilities for the elderly, because they realize that these the majority of the population is over the age where they will be needing state care. If we look at gender, if more females are being born than male, then the government will need to put in place plans to take care of the larger number of females, right? So depending on where the population is skewed, whether it is based on the age or the gender, whichever of the on the list here, then the government will respond in kind, because it is the government's job to ensure that the population is catered to and catered for in the precise manner. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, in order to ascertain the age, the ethnicity, the employment status of individuals within the country, the government will do what is described as a census. So let's move to see what a census. Hold on, don't move yet. Go, go back. Who can tell us what a census is? Anybody?
There, a simple definition is a census, is a survey.
A survey. All right. So that's a simple definition. We want a little more impressive definition, you could say.
Sir, a census is a survey carried out um, every 2 years or every year that determines the population or other things.
All right. So the idea of the census is to determine the number of individuals living in a particular area at a given time, right? So that's the idea behind the census. A census doesn't necessarily mean that you're counting the entire population. It could be that the government is not interested in counting everybody. The government could just be interested in counting the people in Manchester or the people in St. Elizabeth, right? So whenever there is a count of the population in a particular area or within a particular country, that is what we describe as the census. And we already looked at the some of the data that can be collected from a census. But what would be the reasons for conducting a census though? What would be some of the reasons for conducting a census?
Sir, to find out the amount of people in the area where the census is taking place.
All right, so to find out the number of individuals living in a particular area. Yes, Martin. Who's coming next? Punchinella, little fellow.
Oh, okay, Jay.
Sir,
Who's coming
it
next?
could be like to check. Okay. To check, love you, sir. To check the situation, like say which members of the population need certain resources, like who needs food, who needs clothing, and such, sir.
Exactly. That's it. So, in order to ascertain who in the population is in need of um, resources, etc. Good. All right. Very good. All right. Let's hear from somebody else now.
I have a question.
All right. Go with your question.
A census is always related to population.
Are you thinking about another idea of what a census could be about? Go ahead and share.
Um, they're just uh, I don't have another idea, sir. I was just checking if it's only a population or a certain amount of people in a region, I guess,
Oh, all
or
right.
if it's always related to people.
I like them kind of question there. Yeah, I like those kind of questions. Good question. But for the purpose of um what we are doing, we're looking at the term census in terms of population, right? Um, so a census is the procedure of systematically enumerating and acquiring and recording information about the members of a given population, right? That is basically what the census is all about. Yeah. Now, the aim of the census is to count the entire population of a country and at the location where each person usually lives. The census asks questions of people in their homes and um, their living situation, including how much people live in the house or stay in the house, what is the sex, as in the gender of the people that live in the house, what is the age, what are the ages of the people that live there, and also the race or the ethnicity of the people that live there, right? So that's basically the focus.
Okay, sir.
All right. But we have different kinds of census, though. So it depending on the focus. All right. But for our purposes, we are talking about counting the population. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Go to the next slide now, Bree. So the population census. Brianna, you can go ahead and read for us.
Countries complete a census every 10 years. Enumerators collect information on every individual and household. Data is entered on a computer system. A census report gives information about the country and each local district. Information about individuals is not published. Census information helps plan provision of schools, housing, and other facilities.
All right. Now it says that a census is done every how many years? Every 10 years. However, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a generally accepted thing that is done right across the board. So a country may not have to stick with the 10 years. So let's say um, within the next 5 years, let's say that there's a population boom in Jamaica. So the government begins to realize that there is a large degree in terms of birth and also um, migration, I mean immigration, people coming into the country, then of course the government may deem it plausible to have a count of the population. Or let's say there is um, mass movement in terms of migration within Jamaica. So let's say more persons start to move from the country into the town areas, then the government may say, hey, we need to find out what is really happening. Um, Realize that persons are moving into the urban centers. So we need to see how best now. What are the numbers like? How can we assist? Do we need to put in place new infrastructure? Do we need to build more schools? Do we need to um, put a restriction on individuals moving and living in the town areas? What do we need to do? So, based on what is happening in the country, the government may desire to have a count of the population before the 10-year period is over. All right. Are we clear for this slide? Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So let's move to the next. Let's move to the next slide. Martin, you're going to read here.
Oh, sir, it's not moving.
Oh my.
You're frozen.
It just changed.
All right. So we are coming to the hard stuff now. All right.
Po-
So go
Population
ahead,
dis-
Martin.
okay. Population distribution and density. Population distribution describes where people live. Population density is the number of people per square kilometer. Population density is low in mountainous, forested, or very dry areas and in wetlands. Population density is usually high where jobs are available and in areas where it is pleasant to live.
And Martin, I used to read fast. I want you know, if you read slow. All right. So two key takeaway points here. So population distribution describes where the people live. Good? So the distribution describes where they live. So if we were going to look at the distribution of um, people living in Manchester, we would right away realize that the distribution is spread out pretty thin, right? So we have people all over Mile Gully, Mandeville, Newport, um, Spurtree, right? So that's the distribution. That's where they live, right? Now the density now, if we look at the population density, we will realize that based on density, Mandeville is the area that is most dense, most dense in Manchester because that is where most of the people are living, right? So that's where the largest number of persons are living in Manchester, right? Got it? Get it? Nobody is
Yes,
here?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
All right, good. I'm glad you get that. Now, naturally, there's going to be um, some factors that will influence how dense a population the population is in an area, right? Because naturally, a lot of persons can't live on mountains, no? Because then we drop off, 'cause then we drop off, no? Or in wetland areas or in forest. Once we find these areas, we're going to recognize that the density is going to be low. That means there is going to be less number of people living in this area, right? Because of how the area is set up. So if it's mountainous, you don't find a lot of people living on Blue Mountain, don't?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Exactly. You don't find.
Right. But you do find a lot of
Yes, sir.
persons living in a flat area. You don't find a lot of persons living in highly flood prone areas in Jamaica. No? So even though people live there, we don't have a high density of individuals that live there. So the density is not high. So the distribution is there, yes. People live in areas which are wetlands, and the people live in areas that are forested and mountainous. But in terms of the density, you realize that there is not a large number of individuals that live there. Where the density will be higher or highest is where you're going to have availability of resources that are necessary for survival. So you'll find that in the urban areas, in the urban centers, so where you're going to have your factories, your schools, all of the resources that will be needed, that is where the density is going to be significantly higher than in the other areas. That's clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's motor on. All right, population growth. All right, who can tell me what would be some of the things that would characterize population growth? Or tell me in layman terms, how does a population grow? So I need some ways that the population grows.
Through migration or immigration.
No, it wouldn't be. It's a emigration. Yeah.
Sir,
So,
would
so
pregnant be one? Like most people get pregnant and give birth.
okay. So it's not only about being pregnant, but it's about live births, right? Live birth, because you can have, I say, um, so it must be live births, right? Because if a baby is stillborn, it's stillborn. Yeah. All right. So
Yes.
let me see the next slide now. All right. So here we go. This is how the population grows. So this is how the population grows. Let me see who will take the opportunity to read and explain this one. I'm just going to leave you. Who will take the opportunity to read and explain this one? All right, Martin, it looks like they're waiting on you.
Okay, sir. I'll read slower this time too.
Okay, good.
Okay. Population change. The population of the world is increasing. In any country, the rate of population change depends on birth rate, death rate, natural increase, and migration. With a high birth rate and inward migration, the population increases rapidly. Calculating growth rates. Plus birth rate minus death rate equal natural increase. Plus natural increase plus immigration minus immigration equals population change.
All right. All right. Thank you, Martin.
Welcome.
So, we have one, birth rate, two, death rate, three, natural increase, and three, and four, migration. One, two, uh, one, two, three, four, migration. Right? And of course, migration is further divided. We look at immigration and emigration, which are the two categories of migration. So, how do we calculate the population increase of a country? So, if we look at all of the factors, that is how we will know if the population is actually growing. So, if we look at the birth rate versus the death rate, we will find the natural increase. Natural increase here speaks to how many persons have been born as opposed to how many persons have died. So if 100 persons dead and 50 persons have died, then we have found the natural increase of the country, right? You with me so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. So with a high birth rate and the inward migration, that means people are coming to your country, inward migration, right? The population increases rapidly. Yeah, calculating the growth rate. So simple, your birth rate, which is the plus, and you minus the people who dead, and you find your natural increase. Now, if you want to find out the population growth, the overall growth in the population, so you find the natural increase first, and then you're going to find out how many persons have arrived in the country, which is I, immigration. So it has the plus sign there because it is showing an increase into the country, right? The E one is showing minus because it is decreasing. So numbers are leaving your country, right? So when it is I, you know it, they are coming in. When it is E, you know they are going away. You get it?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes.
right. So when it is I, the people them are come, and when it is E, the people them are leave. Good. So once I enter a country, I am considered as an immigrant. Once I am leaving my country, I am considered as an immigrant. Good. So if 500 persons leave Jamaica and 1,000 persons enter Jamaica, then the population is at 500, right? And then all we would have to do now is to add the natural increase to that. Once we add the natural increase, then we will see how much the population has changed. Yeah, good so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, go on with it, Brianna. All right, who's coming next? Rhea Smith, your time.
Birth and death rates. In most countries, birth rates have decreased. Most women have smaller families than in the past. When the fertility rate for each woman or woman is 2.1, 2.0, the population remains approximately stable. Life expectancy in many countries have increased to 70 or more. Improved sanitation and living conditions have reduced infant mortality.
So you was at Martin. All right. Thank you so much for your lovely reading, but I think you need to explain some of these things to us now, or do I need to do it?
So I'll
You
try to
start it and
explain.
I finish it.
Okay. So in most countries, birth rates have decreased, meaning that less persons are being born. Next point is most women have smaller families than in the past. Families are now smaller, possibly due to the birth rate decreasing. Right, sir?
Are you ready to know?
Okay. Third point, when the fertility rate for each woman is 2.0, the population remains approximately stable. Sir, can you add to that?
Um, what is the fertility rate? So that's
Yeah.
the term. That's the term we need to define. So we need to define what is fertility rate, what is life expectancy, and infant mortality rate.
So should I explain what fertility rate is?
Unless you see somebody else who gonna do it for you, I don't know. Do you see anybody else that's interested?
Okay, sir. I'd assume that fertility rate is how much children a woman has.
So the fertility rate is the um so the average number of children born to each woman during their lifetime. So it's the number that is expected, right? Now, so here we assume that the fertility rate, the consistency is that for each woman in the population, that so they are making an assumption, right? That each woman in the population will only have 2 children on average, right? So that is the scope in the world as we know it today. So that's the average. So based on all the numbers, right? Based on all the censuses, all the data that they've collected, on average, each woman has 2 children, right? That is why it says that when the fertility rate for each woman is 2, the population remains approximately stable, right? So if each woman is having those numbers in terms of the average number of 2 children per woman, then the population is going to be stable. Now, the population will become unstable if more women consistently are having above this two. So if they are having 3 and 4 children, then we know the population is going to become unstable, right? Because when we factor in everything in terms of the resources available for consumption by the world's population, right? Once everybody in the population, in terms of the women, once they only have 2 children, then the resources that we have available will be able to feed everybody within the range. But once we realize that they are going overboard with having 3, 4, or even 5 children, then we know we are going to become unstable, and then we eventually are going to starve to death. Yeah. So it says most women have smaller families than in the past. Now the thing about that is that we say, based on this situation, in the past people used to have larger families, but yet still nowadays we see where the population within the last 50 years, it has grown exponentially, where it is now maybe 3 times larger than it was before, right? And if we look at the statistics based on the trend, it will push to becoming by about 2050, it will double again, right? So we are seeing that with all the family planning that is now available, it doesn't necessarily mean that the population will not increase, because a large numbers of persons who are currently alive, and the fact now that we have um, more resources in terms of medication, and in terms of life expectancy, um, is expected to increase also, which takes us to life expectancy. So life expectancy is the number of years that an individual within a country is expected to live. So the average number of years an individual within a country is expected to live, right? So it doesn't mean that everybody will reach this age, you know. It means that on an average, so let me take 2 persons. So one person live, and it's is a simple explanation. So one person is alive up to age 80. When they reach age 80, then dead. The next person is alive up to age 60. When that person reach age 60, them dead. What is the average? Hello?
80.
Sir.
If I slap you, you see 80.
Repeat
It
that,
is
sir. Repeat that.
70,
one
sir.
per,
Yes, sir.
one person is alive up to age 60. The next person is alive up to age 80. What is the average?
60.
70.
70.
70.
That's
70.
70.
Yeah, so it must be 70, right? So we just simply add those two ages, and we just divide it by 2. So that is how the life expectancy of a country is measured. So the government will go through the data. So that is why death certificate is important, right? Birth certificate, death certificate is important, because the government needs to know the expectancy of the individuals who are the life expectancy of the individuals who are a part of the population, because this information will inform the government in terms of making plans for development, right? So if the government realize then, hey, the life expectancy of the population is 50%, then the government will need to put in place plans to see how can I get more people to live beyond 50 years, right? Or if the government realizes that the population in terms of life expectancy is 70 years, how can I get individuals to live up to 80 years? How can I push the life expectancy upward? Right? Because the government should not be planning for you to die. The government should be planning for you to live as long as you can. Right? Because the government is seeking for the population to become more productive. Right? Improve the sanitation and living conditions have reduced infant mortality rate. What is the infant mortality rate?
So,
What is the
sir,
infant mortality rate?
well, sir, infant mortality itself is the death of an infant before his or her first birthday, and the infant mortality rate is the number of infant deaths for every 1,000 live births.
All right. So how do we find the mortality rate now? So when the government comes up, boom. So if we do the count of the population based on the number of infants who are born, so 20,000 infants are born, right? 20,000 infants are born, and let's say of the 20,000, 2,000 are become deceased before their first birthday. What is what would be the rate there? What would be the ratio?
So what are the numbers?
Then almost
The ratio wouldn't be
I didn't hear.
is 1 to 10 or 10 to 1, whichever way it's supposed to be. But that's at 10% death. 10% of them dead.
right. So if you look at it, the government will be realizing now that for every
1 in every 10 dies, sir.
right, so 1 in every 10 infants who are born die, right? So that is how we will determine the infant mortality rate. Yeah. Now,
Yes,
the
sir.
infant mortality rate is sometimes used as an indicator of a country's level of development. So if the country if when you look at a country and if more than 30% of the infants die within the first birthday, then you will realize that the country they're not doing well at all, because it shouldn't be that so much of the infants are dying, because it's a modern society that we live in. We have access, well, rather we should have access to a lot of amenities in term not amenities rather, but um, medical resources. So using those resources, we should be able to keep our children alive, right? So that's birth and death rates. Let's go to the next slide. Are we sliding out of time?
Seems so.
Martin, that ain't even funny. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, population pyramid. All right, here is where it gets interesting, because everybody have to know how to deal with the population pyramid, because once you'll maybe you'll see a few pyramids in your multiple choice questions. You may see a pyramid on your um on your paper too as well. So you have to know how to deal with the pyramid. So tell me what is happening on the pyramid. A volunteer, except anybody who has gone already. So Brianna has gone, Smith gone already, and Martin. Anybody except those persons.
Wait, what
Tell
did
me,
you ask for though, sir? What did you ask for?
just tell me what is your what are your observations. So what do you observe on the pyramid? Nobody no observe nothing. All right, our brain is tired, so we are just gonna wrap things up here because I like I'm not brain tired. So I mean, yeah.
Well,
So we're gonna end today, and then we will pick up here on Monday. All right?
oh, okay, sir.
Yeah. Look like on a brain tired,
Mm.
or is there one who can save us?
Well, I'll say something about the first one. I realize for young and growing population, it's wider at the bottom and gets thinner, showing that the bottom is the amount of showing the high birth rate, while it's a lot less people towards the top when they're much older. When they're elderly, it's a lot less compared to how much people were alive when they were just born.
Oh, okay. All right. That's an observation. That's what you see. Yeah. Now, if we look at the
Oh,
X,
and that females are a bit live a bit longer. It
right,
seems, yeah, females live a little bit longer than males on it.
all right. So those are the trends that you notice. All right, no
Sir,
problem.
sir,
Yeah. All
sir.
right. So we are gonna stop there today. So Brianna, when we come to the next class, you are our official sharer. So we will see you sharing on Tuesday again. Or is Monday? Monday, right?
Yes, sir, Monday.
All right. So until then, my people, persons who are still in the backlog with their questionnaires. So if you haven't completed your questionnaire and stuff like that, you need to sort that out and let we see where you're at. All right. Um, for those of you who are working, continue working, but don't work and go too far ahead without updating your teachers. So once you have tabulated for your questionnaire, um, just tell us that, hey, sir, I'm going to be using these graphs for my presentation. Is that okay? All right. So just don't go ahead and go do anything, and then you might have to start from scratch. Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Have
Okay,
a good
sir.
day, everybody.
You too, sir.
Yes, guidance, my people.